We broke our own rule, and I think during travel that's okay. Hey guys, if you're traveling to Singapore soon, I want to share with you a lot of the really dumb mistakes that we just made as a little family of 3 visiting Singapore that I wish I could go back and do differently. Kind of crazy story. So we had only planned on being in Singapore for 1 week, me, my husband Phil, and our 2-year-old son Dorian, just as a stopover on our way from Vancouver to Indonesia. We're going to Indonesia for 4 months to live there as part of a scientific research project. But because of paperwork issues with our Indonesian visas, my son Dory, my 2-year-old son, and I got stuck in Singapore for 3 extra days while my husband went on to Indonesia. So our time in Singapore was, I guess, maybe a little bit more stressful than the average person, and quite budget busting if I'm honest, because Singapore is not cheap. But despite all of that, I think we made the best of it. We actually had a really good time. Singapore is awesome, and we made a ton of mistakes. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. Totally our own fault, since our whole focus was on our Indonesia trip and we did not do enough planning or research beforehand before going to Singapore. We didn't know how to do it with a baby or a toddler, so hopefully this video will help you out. Okay, we're on day 5 of jet lag with Dorian. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. 5 days of extreme jet lag. How are we holding up? Not well. Don't overplan your first few days, especially if you're coming from the other side of the world like we were. We had a 15-hour time difference, and it literally took a full 7 days for my son to get back to his normal sleep schedule. Jet lag plus heat and humidity means that you're going to want to do something light and easy your first couple of days. I'll give you a few ideas for this in just a minute. First thing I would go back in time and tell myself is that it is hot and humid. And yes, I knew this. I knew Singapore was hot and humid, but it is beyond anything you could ever imagine. Like, we are still in Southeast Asia now. We are in Jakarta in Indonesia, but it is nowhere near as hot or as humid as it was in Singapore. And for my little Canadian toddler coming from Vancouver, it was a huge adjustment and like actually kind of a shock for him. So I would say it would be a good idea for you to carry around maybe even like a little like water mister bottle, a little fan for your stroller, wet cloths, face cloths in a plastic baggie to put on your necks or on your toddler's face. I was using wipes at some point just to cool him down. The tap water is safe to drink. They have one of the most advanced water purification systems in the world in Singapore. I would say bring a tablet for boring outings. I know this is controversial. Our rules at home personally are that our son is only allowed to use the tablet, his little kid tablet, during transit. So in cars and airplanes, trains, buses, basically, he's not allowed to like sit at home and use his tablet. However, we adjusted those rules big time this week because of said jet lag and because there were a lot of things that us parents wanted to do that Dory just was not interested in and would not have sat still for or let us enjoy without his tablet, quite frankly. For example, our son's not a big eater. He's not super interested in food, and one of the big things I wanted to do was visit hawker centers, which are these open air vendor stalls in Singapore that are really famous, that are full of delicious food, and our toddler was not going to sit still and let us experiment and try all the different foods nicely and calmly without wanting to run around in this crowded hot place. And so the tablet, sitting in his stroller with his tablet for a little while we enjoyed that, was really, really helpful. We broke our own rule, we bent our own rule, and I think during travel that's okay in my book. Don't plan on walking a lot in Singapore. At home, we're big walkers. We like to walk everywhere, and that's what we did on our first day in Singapore, and it was a huge mistake. We were so hot and tired and cranky, and I wish we had just taken a cab. Speaking of, download the Grab app before you go. It's like Uber in Singapore, and it's really good. They also offer what's called a Grab family option in the app, and basically it's a car that has a car seat. We aren't traveling with Dory's car seat right now, so for us that was really handy. Also, you don't want to take a cab, take a Grab to a tourist attraction and then have to lug your car seat around with you at the museum or whatever, so it's kind of perfect. Public transportation in Singapore is also really safe and efficient and comfortable and air conditioned. They're stroller accessible example, we took the metro and the bus a lot while we were there. You can just tap on using your credit card. It will cost you a little bit more, but for us it was worth it. We didn't feel like going through the trouble of buying a metro card. Something I wish we had had is a stroller with a sunshade. We're traveling right now with the crappiest stroller in the world right now. We wanted to bring a stroller with us to Southeast Asia that we didn't care about, that we got on Marketplace, which in theory is great because if we lose it or it gets broken, we don't care about it at all, but it's been so crappy. The wheels suck, it doesn't have a sunshade, it doesn't recline, and so we haven't been able to like put Dory in it for outside naps. A sunshade is really crucial, especially in a really hot place like Singapore. Lesson learned. Try to not be like us and fight jet lag by being outside as much as possible your first few days. We just gave in to our jet lag and slept whenever we wanted. So do as I say and not as I do if you want to get over jet lag quickly with your family and not have it take 7 days like it did for us. So try to do activities outside, but not necessarily outdoors. There are a lot of outside your hotel indoor cool activities you can do in Singapore, thankfully. For example, there's Vivo City Mall and a lot of other malls that have things for kids to do. This one that we went to, Vivo City, had a kids arcade and a splash park and so many shops to visit. Get a hotel with a pool. This is so important. We did not have a pool at our hotel, and like I said, we were in Singapore for a week and a half and it was so hot and humid and we didn't have a pool. And now that we are in Jakarta, we have multiple pools at our hotel and it's such a game changer with a toddler. Ideally, if it's within your budget, you would also get a hotel room that has some outdoor space, like private outdoor space, so that when your toddler wants to run around, you don't actually have to go to a destination. You can just open the doors and let them run around. But I know this isn't in everybody's budget. It's not in ours right now. Some of our favorite places to go in Singapore with Dory were the Botanic Gardens, even though we went probably too early in the week and it was still really hot and humid for him. But it's great. We saw so many animals, including turtles and giant monitor lizards, huge trees. It's just beautiful there. The Gardens by the Bay, which is maybe like the most famous thing to see in Singapore. It's a really big area that's famous for those big giant trees that you can visit. There's a free kids area with a really cool splash pad and a cafe and a playground. There's a food court. We really love the Natural History Museum. They have dinosaur bones and all kinds of taxidermied animals, so Dory just had a blast there and we did too. It was super interesting. I loved going to Sentosa with Dory. This is one of the things I did alone with him while we were waiting for our visas to come in from Indonesia. It's basically the southern part of Singapore, and it's the southernmost part of continental Asia, so you can get your picture taken with that sign. And it's just full of attractions. Universal Studios is there. It's full of beaches. We sat at a calm beach, a perfectly calm beach for toddlers to swim at. We were trying to save money and go to cheap places or free places, but there are plenty of things to do in Singapore if you have the budget for it. If you're coming from far away and you know that your toddler is going to be jet lagged, I would say plan on having lots of crafts, snacks, activities, toys packed in your bag for them to use at 2 a.m. when they wake up and you're not planning on leaving your room for another 4 or 5 hours. This was our case, and we luckily have a busy bag full of stuff for him to play with, plus his tablet, so he didn't bother us too much for those 4 or 5 hours in the morning before we were ready to leave the room. Be prepared and be patient for an extra clingy or needy toddler because they're out of their routine, they might be uncomfortable. This was my son our first few days in Singapore, and so we just needed to give him a lot of extra love during this time to reassure him because he was just really out of his element. We all were, but it's extra confusing for a little 2-year-old baby. Plan on buying tons of cold drinks and ice cream for both you and your toddler. Honestly, ice cream was a lifesaver for us. Thanks for following along on this crazy adventure of ours. Stay tuned for more. Check out a couple of these videos to learn more about traveling and adventuring with a young family, and I will see you in my next video.